Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight we are on episode 288, and we're going to be talking a little bit about acclimating new pets to bushcrafting or in the woods in general. So, as you folks may see here before you, those that are viewing this podcast live, Ben has himself a new fur family member. So, Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about the new family member and then lead us into our discussion here tonight?
My family decided to get a new dog. So this is Levi, and Levi is was an Aussie Mountain Doodle. So by a lot of people's opinion, I guess a mutt, but you know, and we needed a dog that could suit our lifestyle, and this was something that we felt did. The doodle part of it is supposed to be hypoallergenic. That really helps me. I have pet allergies to dogs and cats especially. I needed something that could handle that. I wanted a dog that was mid-size. I think we've talked about this in another episode. A dog that was big enough that I felt it could take care of itself in a lot of situations when it's fully grown. This guy is like 6 pounds. He's basically a squirrel. But he'll get bigger. He'll probably be about 35, 40 pounds. And so if he gets to that weight, he's big enough that I still feel comfortable carrying him out of the woods if I had to. But yet I think he's, most small nuisances he's free of. He's not going to get picked up by an eagle. Most animals will think twice before they attack them. There's easier game for them. So that helps. And we've also talked about it as a companion. Like puppy dogs are, especially, dogs are great. But how do we get them ready for it? Because you just can't grab any dog and start running around the woods and expect to have a good dog for it. I mean, there's steps we have to go through to get there. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, I think. To start with, I would say the very first thing you need to do is make sure that vaccines and medical issues are already taken care of. So, we love taking our dogs in the woods, but there are diseases, there are things, there's ticks, there's other things that we need to deal with. So we need to make sure that they're healthy and comfortable, and that's not going to become one of our big risks. And you have dogs too, and I'm sure you take care of them with that. You look at what medically they need and make sure that they have that available to them. And that's definitely one of the first things you want to do.
No, absolutely. And just to give my 2 cents on the subject before we move on with it, it's funny enough how often that people can put off vaccinations and things like that. And they really are another member of the family. So it's the same as taking yourself to the doctor. You really shouldn't put it off, especially if you're going to be taking them into an environment like that. Making sure that their vaccines are up to date, getting them chipped or at least good tags on them. I know our dogs, all of them, hated collars and the tags, and they would constantly get their jaw under their collar and somehow chew it off. Doesn't matter how tight you make it, or they would get it locked in their mouth. So most of our dogs, they don't wear collars, they wear harnesses. And we put the tags on them. But the last couple we got them chipped as well, because you never know if that's going to come off or what the deal's going to be. And hopefully, if the dog or pet in this instance ever got away, and somebody found them, they'd at least bring them to a vet where they could potentially be scanned for a chip and something like that. So anybody out there that finds an animal and they're trying to find its owner, a good place to start really is the veterinarian clinic, just to get them checked to see if they are chipped in any way, shape, or form, or they may be familiar with the animal in that area. I know our veterinarians here, they would recognize our dog. Like, it's a smaller community. They're very aware of the pets that come in and out of there, and they know them to some degree. So you get a lot of information out of a veterinarian. That's all I have to say, Ben.
For sure. Bigger centers, you may not find the right vet that would be familiar with them. Chipping is fairly common. Right now, I think if you want to bring your dog to the States, one of the requirements is they have to be vaccinated, especially for rabies. They have to be chipped, and they have to be 6 months old. So that's something we have to consider with this guy, because we do spend time in the States now. So very important. And this guy doesn't also like collars, so we put a collar on him, and the first thing he does is not move, because he doesn't want to wear a collar. He's got other things to do. That's in his way. For sure, because there is a risk you'll get separated from your dog, and you see that every year. You'll see people posting, "I was hiking this hike, my dog got spooked and he ran away," and then people spend weeks, months. I've heard of people recovering their dog even years later because somebody else eventually found it and took it in, and then they found out this is where it belonged. So that chip, that can make a huge difference. And collars can get knocked off and stuff, but the chip's pretty permanent unless you take some pretty serious physical damage. That should stick with them for life. So
One
that's
more comment on chipping, if I can, because it was news to me. I was not aware until my wife actually explained this to me. If you are going to get your animals chipped, the best time to have it done is when they're in getting spayed or neutered, simply because they're already under anesthetic. Otherwise, when they go to chip these things, apparently they don't even numb the site. They just take the needle and jam this thing in that's like the size of a grain of rice. Which, I mean, is it lethal? Absolutely not. Could it be a lot of pain for a smaller animal? Maybe. I mean, I always assumed they just put them under anyway when they gave them the chip, but Mel's like, no, they just jam it on in there. That's why she always got it done when the animals were spayed or neutered, simply because they'd already be under anesthetic. So if that is something that you want on your conscience or not want on your conscience, food for thought.
for sure. And the other thing, spayed or neutered. Um, if if you're planning on breeding your dogs, obviously you're not going to do that. But if you're not, and you're going in the woods, taking the time to get them spayed or neutered is a pretty good defense, because it could attract certain animals. They release a scent. They also chase certain scents because if they're in heat, that's something you want to do. And certain animals can breed with the dog and may try to breed with the dog. And coyotes have been reputed to do that in the past. And wolves, I think, technically could. Whether they would or not, probably low. And any wild dogs or other animals, it's something else that can cause confusion for them. So if you're not planning on breeding them, if they're not a dog that you're breeding, definitely get that done. It is our plan for this guy. We've often regretted getting one done because, oh man, it would have made us great puppies. But really, there's plenty of places to get puppies. So if we want a Bob Barker moment, if anyone who catches that, then, don't forget to spay or neuter your animals. Yeah. So taking care of your pet and your companion in the woods is very important. And well, since we're almost to the end of the medical, I think we'll throw in there. Also, when you do your first aid kit, make sure you include a few things for your dog. There are good suggestions out there. I'm by no means the expert on it, but dogs can get cuts. Their feet can get hurt. They can hurt their eyes. They also have been known to get involved with other animals. So porcupines and skunks are quite common. So you've done what you can before you get in there, but the few things that you can bandage them up, they can sprain a leg or hurt themselves. They can also tear off like dew claws and their pads. And that's not uncommon. So something to help treat that, clean an infection, not too different than what you carry for yourself, but be aware of those things, right? Any medicines they're on.
No, absolutely.
So,
That's it too. Medicines are easily forgotten about, and we've mentioned that before. That when we were talking about first aid kits, definitely make sure that. Oh, sorry, folks. Make sure that anything that your pet needs while they're out there is there with them, and that could be as simple as Ben was saying towards the first aid kit. Maybe just some balms and salves for the paws and for their nose and things like that. Just easy things can go a long way. We talked a lot in the past about comforts that make us more at home in the woods. Once again, remember, your pet is your companion. It's just an extension of you. You want to make them comfortable in the woods as well.
Let's say. See that? Come here.
You girls are looking for the new fur baby.
Yeah, well, he was with me, but he's starting to whine a little bit, so you can go with her and play. So the next thing is training. Before I want to take a dog on a serious trip, or even a not so serious trip, there's certain trainings that I want him or her to be able to do. And strongly going to start off with good recall. If you can't recall your dog, and even if you have it on a leash, and you should have a leash available, especially if you're at risk of coming across wildlife or even other hikers and campers, because you don't know what they will have with them. Um, I mean, I've had dogs that were attacked in the woods, usually by other dogs, and usually by other dogs that are not on leashes.
Hmm.
But with having it on a leash, I'm able to pull it in and help defend my dog and protect it. So I do try to keep something like that in consideration. When I'm further in the back, I often do let my dog free for a bit, but only because I know they're going to stay in the area and will come when I call them. So anyone who remembers Molly, I think she's been mentioned before. She was a great dog. She never left with me more than probably my sight. So that was great. So that's something you need to train your dog to do. Know how far to go and what's comfortable and what you expect of them. They're pretty good at doing what you want them to do as long as you're able to teach them what you want them to do. I think that's the biggest weakness you'll come to is learning that communication. They want to please you, but they don't always know how. And if you're not good at teaching them that,
And a good place to start that training is just in your own backyard, honestly. A little game of fetch and set some boundaries. And basically, once they get a certain distance away from you, just give them a holler to come back. Generally, when they're a puppy, try to turn things into games, much like children. They love to learn, provided that it's thrown at them in the right way. Now, something my father always used to say, and take it for what it's worth, because there is mixed emotions on this, is train your dogs like you would train your kids, and train your kids like you would train your dogs. And he literally used to say that the entire time I was growing up. I don't know if it was to get under my skin or not, but he also very well believed it. He trained guard dogs for a stint there, and he was pretty good at it for a while. And you know what? He still has a way with dogs to this day. And like I said, take it for what it is. But what he always used to say was train your dogs like you train your kids, and train your kids like you would train your dogs, and you'll get results.
so dog treats still get you doing things.
I mean, maybe not a dog treat, but I mean, you reward kids for good behavior, reward pets for good behavior. I mean, it is very similar. I'm not going to argue the point. Just depend on where you want to take that. Also, folks, as you can see here, it is good to start while pets are young, getting them out and exposed to the outdoors and things like that. But perhaps before you start doing any kind of deep woods adventuring and things like that, make sure that you set some basic ground rules with a little closer in and around. So, like, once again, short day trips in your own backyard, local community parks where dogs are allowed, and things like that. Get them used to being around the stuff outside, the new smells, and things like that. Simply because if you introduce it a little too quick, they do have a tendency to wander. Not necessarily run, that does get confused a lot. They say, oh, my dog took off, which, yeah, some will, but otherwise, they just get really curious. It's a bunch of new stuff. They go out sniffing, they want to see, they want to explore, they want to experience. And because they are young, puppies and stuff like that, much like kids, they just forget how far they've actually gone away from their safe spot. So everything kind of in steps. Yeah, so moving on a little bit. We talked about getting some basic training in there. The distance thing is definitely really important. You don't want them to go any further than a line of sight, generally. Ben was saying there a little earlier. If you can't see your dog, they really shouldn't be that much further away from you, because then you can't really account for them. It doesn't matter how good your dog is and how well they listen, how little trouble they get into. It could be as simple as they slip into a hole you didn't notice. And then all of a sudden, you can't see them anymore. I know I had my old German Shepherd out in the woods. She was literally just out of my sight for like 30 seconds. She stuck her head in some hole in a knot, or like it was an upturned root or something like that. Anyway, she stuck her head in to sniff something and got stuck. And it took hours for us to find her. We just did a search pattern and eventually found her. And everybody's thinking, oh, well, why couldn't we hear her making noises? Her head was underground. We didn't really hear her until we almost tripped over her, and by that point she was pretty exhausted. We had to get her cut out and stuff like that. So definitely don't let your pet go any further than your line of sight. And on that, maybe some high vis markers on them is not a bad idea either. When we take our dog out, we have a light up collar. So as soon as it starts getting a little dimmer outside, like not bright, we turn the collar on. We also have a high vis vest for the dog, which sounds a little ridiculous, but you know what? Anybody seen our dog? It's a black and white dog. You get outside at night, especially a night like tonight where it's cloudy and there's very little starlight and moonlight, that dog disappears 10 feet away. unless you've got something that reflects a little bit of light or is a little bit more visible at night.
But especially hunting season, I really think that's very, very important. But year round, you're right. Like at night, reflective collar, reflective vest, or at least the day glow orange type stuff really helps you locate your dog and identify that it is your dog that's running just next to you and not something else. So it helps you quickly identify where your dog is in that. And if something happens, like an emergency or something that gets people's adrenaline going, being able to know where your dog is one less worry that you have while you're dealing with other issues. And if you're cutting trees down, you don't want trees to fall on your dog. And I've been hunting with a dog that actually got caught in a leash in a snare. And so similar to that, your situation, if we weren't able to locate the dog quite quickly, that could have been quite dangerous. So having control of your dog and knowing where he is utmost important. There's other commands that you'll want to teach your dog, and I won't get into all of them, but yeah, sit, stay, things like that, the standard ones. And if there's other things you want to teach them, do that. The other thing is you have to give them time to acclimatize to the new environment. So if you get a dog, the first thing you don't want to do is a 7-day trip with the dog, having never been in the woods before. I'm not saying I haven't done it. I definitely did. It wasn't 7, it was 3, with a new dog, and it had its challenges. We had to be a lot more conscious of it and take really close care of it. But if you can acclimatize that dog to walk in, it's easy. Take them for a walk on the park, a few times. If you're going to go with gear, put the gear on so they get used to seeing you with the gear and it doesn't startle them or spook them. If you're going to put gear on your dog, my dog oftentimes carried a little backpack and had a couple of pouches on either side. And I carried his food, his treats, and his collapsible bowls on him. And that was really convenient to me because then when I needed it, it was right there. That being said, if you put all that stuff on your dog and he's running around wild, there's a good chance all that's going to end up hooked in a tree somewhere and you'll be looking for it. So keep the dog close. And be aware of the environment you're going. If we were going through water, I'd always disconnect the bag and carry it for her because I didn't want it to get wet, damaged. But be aware of that sort of stuff too.
So I got a question for you, Ben, because I'm curious to get your take on it, but I think I know the answer regardless. A leash while in the woods. What is your thoughts?
I actually try to use a leash, and it's difficult, especially thicker brush. It is going to get tangled up and stuff. But my thought is, if something does happen, I can use it to pull the dog back towards me, or I can follow it to the. Like I said, it's usually labs for whatever reason. I've had labs lunge at my dog in trails and stuff, and it's having the leash has helped. I can keep the dog too close to me, and I can deal with the issue. The other thing is sometimes other things spook or interest your dog. Squirrels, I don't know how many dogs I've ran across over the years that sees a squirrel and they're gone. And some of those dogs forget how far they've gone, and you could be like hours trying to get that dog back and under control. And if you have a leash on him, you have full control. Dog also knows when he's on the leash that he has to behave. He can't chase things like that. So generally, I do. There are some times I'm a little at camp. I usually give my dogs a bit more freedom. And at night, if the dog isn't in the tent with me, because sometimes I have an alternate arrangement, definitely a rope. Because if at night something happens and spooks, I'd rather be able to get to them and not have them run off. It does put them at a disadvantage, and people can argue this, that, oh, you've got them on the leash, and if something comes in at them at night, they can't get away. Well, that's true, but you should be close enough to be able to help handle that. So should some animal come in and threaten your animal, you can usually get up and scare it off. And if it stays close, you can do it. But if that dog runs and the other animal chases after it, you are no longer going to be able to help that dog. That dog and the other animal that's chasing it is definitely faster than me and you.
Not to mention the simple act of running sometimes will trigger another animal to chase it, much in the instance of like a black bear. A lot of folks will tell you if you know meet a black bear, you just back away cautiously and slowly, try not to be an intimidating force, and 9 times out of 10 the bear's going to leave you alone. Now if you turn and bolt, there is a deep-seated biological instinct in these animals to basically chase you because food runs. You know what I mean? Things that don't run away tend to think, what's the best way to explain this? Because in very simple terms, things that don't tend to run away aren't worth chasing to eat for whatever reason. They either taste bad, they have a defense mechanism. Generally, they're not showing fear towards the bear, so the bear's not hardwired to chase them because it's probably not worth the effort to tangle with it. Something that runs away knows it's going to be eaten, generally, and that triggers the bear to say, that's food, and it chases. Regardless if it wants to eat it or not at the time.
If a predator sees something running, it's generally going to chase it. It doesn't even know why until it's already started chasing. It might catch up to something and say, gee, I have no idea what to do with it. And this is like the dogs that chase cars. It's chasing it because it's moving fast and it wants to see if it can catch it. Once it catches the car, it has no idea what to do with
it. But yeah,
hey, I got
so what have we covered here tonight? Because we're 20 minutes in. I want to make sure that we get everything on this. We talked about getting the dogs or pets in this instance medically checked and make sure they have all the medications and things they're going to need, and some way of identifying your pet while you're out there. We also talked about introducing your pet gradually into the wilderness. That way they don't become overwhelmed with it. We offered suggestions about doing walks in your own backyard or into the local park or just doing a day trip. Or if you're going to do multi-days, start with short days and then work up, but everything should come in gradually. And we talked a little bit about leashing here. Leashing, there is two ways to look at this, and I don't think Ben or I are going to tell you what's right or wrong. Look at your instance and see what works the best for you. I would still suggest, regardless of your feelings on it, take a leash with you, especially if you're going to be walking around some uninhabited trails. Now, in a lot of instances, when I used to go out with the dogs, we'd be traveling trails where we could meet four-wheelers or other vehicles or other people. I would keep my dogs leashed at this time because if I came across somebody, one, I don't want whatever they're taking or having, if they bring their pets or whatever, running after my dogs, and I don't want my dogs bouncing all over them, because you never know. Maybe somebody is absolutely terrified of dogs, and even though my dog is only like 14 pounds, that could be enough to traumatize them, and then they'll be, you know, I can't believe your dog was doing this, that, and the other thing, even though the dog was just trying to be friendly. It's just not a fight that's worth getting into in the middle of the woods. Now, on the flip side of that, I am very off-leash if I know I'm in an area where there shouldn't be a whole lot of stuff, but once again, I train my dogs fairly well before I take them into the woods. They never go further than my eyesight. We have a lot of basic commands to return and sit and stuff like that that Mel and I work on with them. This one here, she's having a little harder time learning. But the other dogs are really, really good about it. But they learn from each other. And this is another thing that I wanted to bring into this. If you are serious about pets and you're always going to have pets and have multiple pets, it's good to get a new pet before all the old pets expire because they will learn faster from each other. And we are learning this now because we started off with one Boston Terrier, got a second one who trained somewhat simpler, then we got a third, and he basically taught himself. We didn't have to do any real training there. He just followed suit. Monkey see, monkey do. Unfortunately, all those dogs expired in their time. Now we're starting over with one, and I'm realizing that training one from the ground up is a lot of effort that I was, and energy I forgot that was required. So if you're going to do that, once again, word of the wise, keep multiple, if you're going to continue having multiple pets, make sure that you keep augmenting the numbers before they reach zero. Am I making sense or am I just rambling, Ben?
No, you have a really good point, and I'm going to throw a caveat into that. If you've trained your dog to do things that you don't enjoy, and you get another dog, it's likely to pick up those bad habits just as well as the good habits. So I had a dog that he had issues, and my next dog definitely learned to bark and picked up some bad habits off my first dog. Now I am starting off fresh, so any bad habits my new dog gets is 100% my fault. And I'm aware of that, and I'm okay with it. Yeah, so I wanted to throw that out there. What else?
We have Mythical Adventures joining us, which potentially for the first time tonight, Just before we gloss over, because they just posted and they say they don't normally get to see us live. Just wanted to say, keep it up. It's always interesting. Well, thank you very much there. That's Mythical Adventures. If you look them up on YouTube, I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure if I'm 100% familiar with you. I will be, if you have an account, I'll be definitely checking it out once this show is over.
What else? Just going through it. Yeah, medical training, prepping. I want to throw this one out there. We were very happy that my last dog was what we called it, a water dog or a boat dog. Loved the water. You have to take time to train them to do things you like and make sure they're comfortable with it. Don't push a dog into doing something he's not ready for. And I've seen this where people are like, oh, the dog should be able to swim better than that. And they toss him out in the lake and, oh, he swims back. And yeah, I guarantee he'll swim back. But good luck getting that dog to go back in the water again if he wasn't ready for it and he's not comfortable with doing that. And so we had a dog years ago that was ruined that way because somebody forced him into the water and they thought it was all great fun, and that dog never went to the water again. So be aware that if you're going to do something like that, you can really affect them. Molly loved the boat. You couldn't get on a boat without Molly following you and getting in with you. She absolutely loved it. So giving them the time to get used to it and get comfortable with it, it's the same as what you would. If I forced you to do something you didn't want to do, you're not going to like it. You're going to avoid it. With a dog, it's the same thing. If you want them to like boats, you're going to have to give them a chance to get used to them. Take your time. Have patience with them. They're intelligent beings too. Argumentatively smarter than some people I know. And
sometimes better company, I will admit that.
And having that patience and giving them a chance to learn it is worth it, because then you have a great companion. So yeah, if your decision is I want to do long distance hikes, slowly get them used to long distance hikes. Get them used to where he's going to sleep. Same thing we say with everything with people, test your gear before you leave. Test your gear for your dog too. Make sure that he knows where he's going to sleep. Make sure he knows what's comfortable, what's not, and that it's going to be good and where his food's going to be. Because all this is new to them. The first times you take them out, they're like, they don't know what's going on, and they're happy generally. They're just excited their owners took them somewhere. But the more used they get to it, eventually they'll see you packing your bags, and they'll be like, oh, I'm going too, and you'll see them. They'll chase you. You can't pack a backpack without that dog being there looking at you like, where are we going? When are we going? What's we doing? So yeah. I'm highly looking forward to getting this dog trained and getting out there. And I know it's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to take a few weeks, a few months until he's more full grown. That doesn't mean he won't have some adventures, but it'll be smaller adventures, ones to build him up. And once he's at a position that I trust that he can walk the distances and stick with me and do the things that I need him to do and return, come when I call him and stay when I tell him to stay. Because I don't want him to see something and get spooked and run, or I don't want to be in a boat and him jump out in the middle of nowhere. And so these are things you have to train them for. And, it means a day at the park, walking in the woods, or a day at the park, paddling around a cove just to see how he's going to do or react. And, enjoy it. If you're going to fish with a dog, and if anyone's ever done this, fish with a dog in a boat, it can be scary because the fish gets in a boat, all of a sudden the dog's going to react differently. Never seen that before. But it's
my dog was absolutely terrified of the first fish I took out of the water. Just had her back fishing. Thought it was going to go great. Went horrible.
Yeah. I've heard of people that get them into a canoe and the dog's jumping from one side to the other. Things stay still, it's kind of okay. And then it flips and all the dogs gets the zoomies on the boat, and all of a sudden you're on one end of the boat to the next.
Yeah, there's a big difference between having zoomies with a little dog like my 14-pound thing and what yours is going to be close to 40.
Yeah, well, and then I've been in the woods with people with a 100-pound dog, Bernese mountain dogs and things like that. That's a big dog. Make sure that you can handle your dog, truly. If that dog does get spooked, or if that dog is scared, can you hold it? Can you protect it? And if you can't, you really have to work on your options. So really, take into consideration. Small dogs have their advantage. Big dogs have their advantage. But really take a chance to understand the dog and what his capabilities, and limitations are, and plan your trips that you're taking the dog on within his capabilities and his limitations.
Yeah, 100%. And once again, you only know that by experience. Like Ben said earlier here, don't bite off more than you can chew first time out. Build up to it. Learn what the dog likes, what it doesn't like. Learn what you're capable of doing with that animal and what you're not capable of doing with that animal. It's going to be different what I would do with just me in the woods with somebody versus me, or sorry, just me in the woods with Ducky the dog than I would if it was Mel and I and the dog in the woods. I'd be a lot more adventurous because then there's two of us. We can keep a little bit more eye on the little one. You know what I mean? Versus just myself. So yeah, Ben, great point. Know the limitations of yourself and your animal, and together, as well as individually.
Um, and past that, I mean, in a lot of ways, treat them like you would any other partner. Any other person you're going to spend time in the woods with, take into consideration their needs, their wants, their interests, what makes them happy, and take that into consideration and make sure that you've captured all those things. And if you have, and you've taken the time to train them and acclimatize to them, I would argue that taking a dog in the woods is one of the best partners you can ever take in the woods. And you know me, I'm not a huge fan of solo camping. I like the concept sometimes, but I always like that security of having a friend or even a conversation partner to have. And I've had some great conversations with dogs, I gotta say.
So there's a good point that Red Bear's bringing up here, and we kind of touched on it, but let's dive into it just for a second here before our time is up. But before we finish up, anyway, Red Bear, I learned the hard way not to let your dogs run away too far. Or old dog Molly found and killed a porcupine. It was an expensive vet bill. So yeah, there's always the danger that your own dog's going to get injured. But let's look at the flip side of this. Play devil's advocate a little bit. You don't want your dog running off and dispatching wildlife either, because then it becomes a nuisance. So yeah, you don't want your dog to get hurt, and you don't want it to hurt anything else. There's two sides to that coin. I definitely don't want my own dog to get hurt. But yeah, I don't want her out there killing rabbits. You know what I mean?
No.
If somebody sees that, one, it looks bad on the bushcrafting community in general. And yes, I do worry about that a tiny bit. But on the other side, I just don't want it out there killing rabbits. It's senseless killing. There's no need of it.
And do realize you are responsible for anything your dog does while in the woods or in a park or anywhere else. So if you're walking along and your free dog gets in a tangle with another dog that's on a leash, you are most likely going to be the one found at fault. Even if the one on the leash is the one that instigated it and was the whole problem, that dog was on a leash and under control of his owner. Yours was not. And this has happened, I think, recently here in Vancouver. There was a dog that was seriously injured by another dog. You know, one was on a leash, one was off. I think this happens around, in all places. If you have both your dogs on a leash, then it becomes a little bit more iffy. But if there is an altercation and an animal gets hurt, you're much, much better off if you've had your dog on a leash and in proper control. If you suspect your dog would bite another dog, I would also suggest maybe having a muzzle in areas where you're going to be exposed to a lot of other animals, just to prevent that risk. And I am not a fan of muzzles. But if it's your only option, consider that. You don't want to be responsible for some kid or some other dog getting hurt because your dog can't handle it. So that's where even, socializing your dog at a young age, and that's the stage we're in right now, trying to get our dog used to meeting people and other animals. And it's a difficult battle because I also have to make sure that they're vaccinated and clean and all that. So it's a difficult time, but it's really worth doing to make sure you've socialized it. And if you're going to take your dog and you have other people coming with you, make sure they're aware of the dog, that it is coming, and that they know what's to be expected while you're out, right? I think that's it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the last thing that Red Bear said there was both our dogs have alerted me bears are in close proximity. And that is the thing.
Yeah.
Like we were saying just before we kind of switch gears there a little bit, dogs offer amazing companionship and security while you're out there, as well as a source of warmth and entertainment. Honestly, I've watched my dog do goofy things, and it was the most entertaining thing that I've done in a long time. Just the first time my dog experienced a river, nice shallow river, it was hilarious. That's all I can say. It's a ton of fun. But you get a lot out of the relationship too. You know what I mean? that security, that companionship, a little bit of warmth, somebody to have conversations with, which kind of goes with companionship, but it's different. When the conversation's one-sided, sometimes it's more meaningful. Make sense?
Molly talked back. I don't know what you're talking about. She had whole conversations with me. It was funny. I'd say something. I don't know what to tell you. She would. If you were talking to her, she'd look at you. She'd react to you. Studies have shown that dogs understand more than you think. They understand most of what you're saying.
I would believe it. I've had full-on conversations with my dog. I don't know how much, she is a dog, man. There is not a whole lot of higher level thinking going on there. Yes, I'm talking about you. But, she's not dumb. She's quite content with the level she's at. Let's go with that.
Is it the other thing I've heard that female dogs judge their owners?
What is it?
Female dogs judge their owners?
Oh, I absolutely think that she's judging me 100% of the time. That seems right. I have 3 girls in the house that are judging me 100% of the time, and I guess that's just life.
Yeah, and the other thing is, dogs don't think you're capable of making mistakes. So if you kick him in the middle of the night, he thinks you did it intentionally.
My dog sleeps between us, and she gives just as many kicks as she gets, so she's just part of the family.
Very good. Yeah. So beyond that, we're not here to tell you how to raise a dog or how to treat the dog. We are here to tell you, to prep your dog and make sure you're prepared for it. We believe that taking a pet camping can be an awesome experience, and I highly recommend it. So yeah, we'll throw that out there. Beyond that, I'm just going to say, get out there, have fun, let us know how it goes. Robert, you can close off.
No, you pretty much hit the nail right on the head there, Ben. So once again, folks, thanks for joining us here tonight at Acclimating Bushcraft Adventures. As always, if you want to reach out to us and let us know about your adventures or have a question, you can reach us on any of the social medias down below, or just throw us in a search engine. Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. You're going to get a hold of us somehow. We do check our emails and stuff. Sometimes it takes longer because things get sorted into the junk mail when it's not supposed to, but I do even check the junk mail. It's just, you can imagine how much junk mail is in that box when I put the email address everywhere on the internet. We're talking thousands of junk mails a week. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for me to sit down and go through it.
Wish we could say we got that many legit ones.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. If I had a penny for every email I got that was literally scripted right out of the... We notice your podcast could be doing better. I'm sure it could. Everybody's podcast could be doing better. But you know what? This is ours. And we built it to where it is good, bad, or otherwise, and I think we'll keep it that way. But anyway, folks, have a good night. As always, we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Night, folks.